I have three different 4-round Buffalo Bills mock draft scenarios to share with you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, folks, the 2024 NFL Draft is like 2 weeks away. It is coming. And so on this episode, I want to work through three different 2024 NFL mock draft scenarios for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm excited to do this. I'm going to present three different scenarios. One where the Bills trade way up, one where the Bills trade back and they trade out of the first round, and then the last scenario where they stick and pick at 28, but I'm making myself pick a non-wide receiver in the first round. And so we're going to do 4 rounds. I really want to focus in on those premium draft picks that the Buffalo Bills have. And I'll give you some clues as to what I would do with the 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks. But I want to focus in on those top 4 rounds and the different possibilities that exist for the Buffalo Bills. And that's the purpose of a mock draft. I've been doing draft stuff for a long time. The purpose of doing mock drafts, they are thought exercises that present scenarios. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to explore some of the opportunities and scenarios that could exist for the Buffalo Bills in a couple weeks when this draft kicks off. I'm using the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator, and that's just for this episode. We'll probably do 1 or 2 more of these mock draft episodes where I'll use different simulators, but for this one, we're using the one available on Pro Football Focus. My one rule for myself across the 3 mock drafts that I'm going to do today: no repeat selections. I cannot pick the same player twice. So that should give us a lot of opportunity to get into a lot of different players with no repeat selections. So scenario number 1, let's get into it. This scenario is the one where the Bills trade up. And I'm talking into the top 10 for one of the top 3 wide receivers. And step 1 in accomplishing this is identifying the trade partner. And ideally, the Bills would trade up, but as least far up as they have to, right? It becomes less expensive the less far you have to go up. I think the perfect candidate for the Buffalo Bills, if they wanted to explore this big trade into the top 10, is the Chicago Bears, who are picking number 1 overall, but they're also picking number 9 overall. I think they just make a ton of sense. The Bears are entering this draft with only 4 draft picks. They have the fewest amount of draft picks of any team. Now, 2 of those draft picks is pick 1 and 9, right? That's a good spot to be. But then they don't pick again until 75. And then, of course, 122, their last pick. You could see them wanting to add some additional draft capital this year to kind of fill in the blanks from what is missing. And, of course, if they were to make a trade with the Bills, they would, of course, pick up the Bills' first-round pick next year going back from 9 to 28. So let's look at what this deal would look like. I think the Bears are a very logical destination for the Bills. So here's what I have going down. The Bills go from 28 to 9. So the Bills get number 9 overall and number 75 overall. And the Bears get 28, 60, 128, and the Bills' first-round pick next year. I think that's a very fair trade for both sides. Again, the Bills getting 9 and 75. The Bears get 28, 60, 128, and the Bills' first-round pick in 2025. And this puts the Bears in a position now where they have pick 1, 28, 60, 122, and 128 to go with the Bills' first-round pick in 2025. So now they're loaded with 2 first-rounders in 2025. Makes sense for both teams, in my opinion. And following the trade for the Bills have picks this year in 2024, 9, 75, 133, 144, 160, 163, 200, 204, and 248. So the Bills are still, like, despite giving up a lot to move up, they give up in this deal that I'm presenting 60 and 128. They're still loaded with a lot of draft picks, and part of my objective was to get 75 from the Bears to kind of sweeten the pot. And then in 2025, they don't have a first rounder, but they have 2 2s, a 3, 2 4s, a 5, 6, and a 7. Of course, the extra 2 coming courtesy of the Diggs trade. And they're projected to get a compensatory pick in the 4th round for Gabe Davis and the 5th round for Leonard Floyd. So still a decent draft outlook for the Bills this year and next after this big trade. So who are the Bills moving up for at number 9? Well, I think the player the Bills would really want, of course, Marvin Harrison to me is the very clear number 1 wide receiver in this draft. I think the Bills will prefer Rome Odunze out of Washington to Malik Nabers. And I think there's a number of reasons, but I just feel like Rome Odunze is very Billsy, right? Very, very Billsy, process guy. I listened to an interview with him where somebody asked him how to pronounce his name. And he said, if people don't know how to pronounce my name, that just means I'm not doing enough and people don't know who I am. He's the guy that when asked about competing at the combine, while Malik Nabers didn't and Marvin Harrison didn't, he said, of course I'm going to compete at the combine. I want to measure myself historically against all the great players that have come through the combine. He stayed late trying to run a better 3-cone drill. I mean, the guy is processed through and through, big-time leader. You could see him being exactly the type of wide receiver and player in person the Bills would gravitate towards. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Malik Nabers. I just don't know that he's going to come off the same type of way, which leads me to believe they would prefer Odunze to Nabers. So I had the Bills coming up to number 9 for Rome Odunze, who obviously fits the profile of a number 1 wide receiver, very much a do-everything guy that can win at all 3 levels of the field, very good route runner, explosive. He's a total package. He's a total package. Has been productive, got better every single year, and obviously comes to Buffalo and fills an immediate need. So a major, major swing for the Bills here in this scenario. But they come away with Rome Odunze, and I think everybody can take a big breath as it relates to the wide receiver position for the Buffalo Bills. So pick number 9, Rome Odunze, wide receiver, Washington. The Bills' next pick comes at number 75 overall, so just outside of the 2nd round. So their next pick is in the 3rd round. I have them picking an edge rusher, Marshawn Kneeland out of Western Michigan. Kneeland is a really exciting physical presence in terms of size, athleticism, length, power. He's got the goods. And it's just a matter of him putting it all together to realize his potential. And I don't think he's a finished product right now, but boy, oh boy, when the light bulb comes on, you want to be around for that. And so I think this is a reasonable swing for the Bills on a high upside player that I still think has a relatively high floor based on his physical traits alone. But getting him in an attack style defense like the Bills have, I can see him becoming a really good piece of this defensive line rotation. Has good size. He could play inside and outside. So versatility up and down the line. If you watch him at Western Michigan, they moved him around a ton. And his ability to convert speed to power is really, really exciting. Plus the length. I mean, there's a lot to build off of here. And I think he'd be a wonderful mid-day 2 pick for the Buffalo Bills. So then our next pick and our only other pick in the top 4 rounds is at 133. And I have the Bills picking Audric Estime, running back out of Notre Dame. I think the Bills have a very clear need at running back. Right now, of course, all they have is James Cook and Ty Johnson. Those are a couple of good players, but you need another guy that's going to make the roster, plus a whole bunch more depth to fill out your 90-man roster and get through camp in the preseason. Hopefully have something stashed on the practice squad as well. So there's going to be multiple running backs added at some point. And I think a mid-round pick, a 4th-round pick in Audric Estime makes a lot of sense. Running back out of Notre Dame, 5'11", 222 pounds. So very good size. And that's something that's really important to me with what the Bills add at running back. I think they need a guy that has legit size and physicality that can run between the tackles and give you something in pass protection. Well, that's what Audric Estime is, and he's young. He's 20 years old, turns 21 in September, had 2 really productive seasons for Notre Dame in 2022 and 2023. And I mentioned the power dynamics. This guy averaged 4.27 yards after contact per carry in 2024. And so I think this is the exact profile of a back that the Bills need to kind of round out their stable of running backs. So big trade up in this scenario. The Bills come away with Rome Odunze, Marshawn Kneeland, and Audric Estime. And they still have a bunch more picks: 144, 160, 163, 200, 204, and 248. And I think with those picks, and you can apply this to all of the scenarios that I'm going to get to, because I'm not going to make picks in the 5th, 6th, or 7th rounds for these mock drafts on the podcast. Look at the Bills to get defensive tackle, probably 2 offensive linemen, a corner, another wide receiver, and a safety. I think that would be the perfect way to disperse those picks: a defensive tackle, 2 offensive linemen, a corner, another receiver, and a safety in this scenario where I have them going receiver, edge, and running back with the first 3 picks. And candidly, I think that those are the Bills' 3 most pressing needs right now. You can maybe make a case for safety, but I think that's where the biggest holes can be filled on the roster as things currently stand. All right, folks, so that's scenario 1 where the Bills trade into the top 10. Next up, we're going to trade back. We're going to trade out of the first round. So I'm excited to show you that scenario. And then, of course, we're going to stick and pick later on, but not a wide receiver. So be sure to stick with me. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, folks, I would love to hear from you in the YouTube comments. If you're on YouTube, let me know how you're feeling about these different mock drafts, what you like, questions that you have. I'd love to see that in the comments. This next one here is my favorite one of the 3 that I'm going to do today. It's the trade back scenario. And I think once you hear it, I think you might like it quite a bit too. So in this scenario, the Bills are going to move out of pick 28. And one of the trade back partners that I've identified is the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals are absolutely loaded with draft picks. They own picks 4, 27, 35, 66, 71, 90, 104, 138, 162, 186, and 226. This is a team that is in year 2 of Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon as their GM and head coach. They need talent. They need players. And they can have all the draft picks in the world, but at some point they need to turn those into meaningful contributors on the roster. And so I think they're a team that would make a lot of sense to trade back into the first round. And so here's what I have going down. The Bills are going to move out of pick 28. They're going to go back to 35. So 7 picks back. I had the Bills getting pick 35 and pick 90. I have the Cardinals getting pick 28 and the Bills having to give them 163. You know, I'm using trade value charts, so I want to make sure that these are even trades so that nobody can yell at me and say that I was one-sided and the Cardinals would never do that. No, this is a fair trade. So 35 and 90 for 28 and 163. So now the Bills are loaded. They have picks 35, 60, 90, 128, 133, 144, so on and so forth. And I love that I was able to get a 3rd-round pick back. You can see with both of the trades that I did, I found a way to get a 3rd-round pick back. So the Bills can at least pick 3 times in the first 3 rounds, or at least sort of with the first one. With the trade up, I had to make some concessions. But for this one, I was able to get that 3rd-round pick back. So here's where I'm at. Now the Bills move from 28 to 35, and at pick 35, the Bills get wide receiver Xavier Leggete out of South Carolina. You guys know that this is kind of my draft crush right now, wide receiver. I think he's such a great idea for the Buffalo Bills. Coming in like 6'1", 220 pounds, runs 4.39, super explosive, yards after catch, legitimate 3-yard or 3-level threat. I think he's really exciting. I think there's a lot of shades of A.J. Brown, Eric Moulds type ability with a player like this. No, he doesn't run routes like Antonio Brown. You're not going to see him snap off those really, really crisp, hard horizontal breaks. That's not his game. But he can work back down stem. He can run stop routes. Really good with the ball in his hands, explosive, down the field, physical. He's a guy that can get buckets in this offense, that can win leverage battles and separate. I mean, I would love for the Bills to get Xavier Leggete. And the projections on him seem to be all over the place. Mel Kiper did a mock draft this week on Wednesday, and he had Xavier Leggete going 32 overall. That's a first-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. I've seen some mock drafts where he goes at the end of the second round. I don't know what the right thing is. I can tell you what I evaluated on tape. I have a first-round grade on. Xavier Leggete is my wide receiver 4 in this class, and I feel pretty strong about that. I think he's a stud, a true alpha. Love the story. A guy that's been through a lot in his life. Both of his parents passed away when he was in high school. Overcame a motorcycle incident. He put himself in position to work really hard and now be on the NFL's radar after kind of a slow start to his college career. So I love so much about the Xavier Leggete story. So the Bills move back to 35. They get Xavier Leggete. I'm through the moon. The podcast on that is going to be just something to behold. Let's just put it that way. So we trade back to 35. We get Xavier Leggete. Now we pick again at pick 60. How about this? I'm going to double dip at wide receiver. Wide receiver at pick 60, Javon Baker out of UCF. You want guys that can play on the line of scrimmage? Well, here's 2 of them for you. Xavier Leggete and Javon Baker. Javon Baker has good size, really good vertical receiver. So, and Xavier Leggete, I think you get a very complete player, and I love the yards after catch and physicality. With Javon Baker, I think you get a guy that can really win vertically, stack corners, and get, make corners play through him down the field. In some ways, a more explosive version of Gabe Davis, but with better hands. You've seen some yards after catch from Javon Baker. You've seen kind of his route running skill set develop throughout his time at UCF. I think this would be a really fun pair of receivers to double dip with in this scenario where the Bills trade back, get a couple of guys with some size to go with, of course, Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel. So I think this is a foundational moment here for the wide receiver room, and I like how it's coming together. So Xavier Leggete at 35, at pick 60, Javon Baker. Then we're up again at pick 90, where we're going to get ourselves a safety here. One of my favorite safeties I've evaluated for this class, Dadrion Taylor Demerson out of Texas Tech, did an episode a few weeks ago or sometime recently on safety prospects, and I profiled Dadrion Taylor Demerson, and I really like what I see. I want a safety that can play in coverage, and that's what this guy can do. Has a ton of range, has really good ball skills. You can play him in deeper zones, can be a one-high safety, has some man coverage appeal as well, tackles as well for a guy that's really known for his ball skills and coverage ability. So I think he would have a chance to come in and really kind of be the third safety this year. And, you can make a choice on which of Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards you want to move forward with. But I think this guy has real playmaking ability. I think that's what's kind of what I'm hoping to see unlocked this year in the Bills secondary is playmakers. I think they missed that this past year. You think about Trey White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, historically what those players have been, they're playmakers. And I hope that the Bills can get more playmaking out of, of course, Rasul Douglas, who showed that in his half season with the Bills, but I want to see more of that unlocked. Taron Johnson, you need to see it from Christian Benford. I think you get a guy like Dadrion Taylor Demerson, and you can really feel good about your playmaking potential at the safety position moving forward. Now we pick 128 and 133 in the 4th round. At pick 128, we're going with edge rusher Muhammad Kamara out of Colorado State, 33-game starter in college, 45.5 tackles for loss, 30.5 sacks. He's been really productive. 6'1", 250. One thing that I've learned and noticed about the edge rushers and defensive ends in the NFL, they're not like the 270, 275, 280-pound defensive end. Not really a thing anymore. They're like 250. The big defensive ends are like 260, 265. So just calibrate yourself when you hear 6'1", 250. That's maybe a little shorter, but 250 pounds is like the normal weight. If you look at the top 4 edge rushers in this class, Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson, they're all 250 something pounds. So that's what Mohamed Kamara is as well. Really explosive, 4.57 40-yard dash, a 1.57 10-yard split, which is really good. High effort player, good flexibility, good length. He's really appealing to me. And I love the effort that he plays with. And so as a 4th-round pick, to give yourself a guy with some big-time rush upside that's been productive at the college level, that's athletic and explosive and flexible, sign me up. And then at pick 133, we're going to get ourselves a running back. We're going to go with Kamani Vidal out of Troy. 5'7", 213 pounds, ran 4.46, tons of production. I mean, an incredible amount of production across 40 starts at Troy. Really excels in pass protection, really excels in short yardage, and he's one of those guys that just pinballs off of people in terms of being able to win in condensed areas and win after contact. So fits that profile that I'm looking for in terms of between the tackles, short yardage, pass protection. He can catch the ball a little bit. I think that's the kind of mid-round running back that the Buffalo Bills need to add. So in this trade back scenario, the Bills come away with Xavier Leggete, wide receiver, South Carolina at 35. At pick 60, wide receiver Javon Baker out of UCF. At pick 90, safety Dadrion Taylor Demerson out of Texas Tech. 128, edge rusher Mohamed Kamara out of Colorado State. And then 133, Kamani Vidal out of Troy, running back. All right, coming up next, the scenario that I know so many of you are dreading, but I want to present it anyways because I think we need to. It's what the Bills do if they stick and pick and don't pick a wide receiver at 28. That's coming up for you here on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with me. All right, folks, here it is, the stick and pick a non-wide receiver version of this mock draft exercise. So at pick 28, the Buffalo Bills pick edge rusher Chop Robinson out of Penn State. I think after wide receiver, to me, my biggest area of focus is the edge rusher position. And my concern with edge rusher is I think there is a massive talent cliff after the top 4. There's some guys that I like as developmental guys. I just talked about a few of them. Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan. I just talked about Mohamed Kamara out of Colorado State. There's other guys that are interesting to me as well, which we'll probably get to in future mock draft episodes. But there's a major talent cliff after Chop Robinson, in my opinion. And he's a guy that I get excited about watching his tape. Very explosive, very flexible. I mean, he ran like in the 4.4s. And that shows up on tape. And he's got a lot more power and a lot more rush variety than you think he's going to have. I think for him, what it comes down to is just really maximizing his footwork and his handwork simultaneously to become more of a sack artist. That comes together, this guy's going to be really electric. And I think he'd be one heck of a swing for the Bills at pick 28. I just feel like there's room for impact off the edge. I have no idea what to expect from Von Miller. I'm not overly optimistic there. I love Greg Rousseau. I like AJ Epinesa as a defensive end 2.5. You have room for impact here. I think Chop Robinson could really give you a chess piece that allows you to attack the pocket in unique ways. You can move him around too. I think he's a more explosive, more flexible version of Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd. That's what I think of Chop Robinson. So I'd love him at 28. So now you went to bed on Thursday. You're losing your mind. Brandon Beane didn't draft a wide receiver. What's going to happen? The sky's falling. Well, we're going to get a couple of receivers. Our next pick at pick 60, we're going with wide receiver Jalen Polk out of Washington. A little over 6'1", 203 pounds, 31 3/4-inch arms. Ran 4.52 in the 40 with a 1.59 10-yard split, 37.5-inch vertical jump, 10.9 broad jump. This guy's a guy that can win down the field. Almost 17 yards per catch at Washington over the last 2 seasons. Very physical, big-time blocker, big-time ball skills and hands. And so I think he can give the Bills offense a vertical threat, but also a guy that plays with good physicality that can attack the ball in some of those tighter window throws and in some of those areas where you just need to win a leverage battle and go make a play. So decent option for the Bills at pick 60. I might have preferred Javon Baker, but I promised myself I wouldn't pick the same player twice. So we go with Jalen Polk, Washington wide receiver at pick 60. Then at pick 128, we're going to get another wide receiver, Malik Washington, wide receiver out of Virginia. Very different player than the one I just described in Jalen Polk. Washington's a little over 5'8", 5'8.5", 191 pounds. So short but thick, right? He's got a dense build. 30 3/8 on the arm length, ran 4.47, 42.5-inch vertical jump, 10'6" broad jump. Transferred from Northwestern to Virginia this past season, had over 1,400 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. The production was incredible for him. In 12 games this past year for Virginia, he had over 100 yards in 10 of those 12 games. And the 2 games that he didn't have over 100 yards, the first one was the first game of the season against Tennessee, his first game with the team. He had 29 yards. And then his other one was middle of the season against Boston College, had 9 receptions for 97 yards. So 97 yards or more in 11 of 12 games. I mean, the guy was really productive. And I think there's something to be said for a player that everybody knows the ball's going to him, and there's nothing they can do about it. And now, yes, he does profile best as a slot player, right? He's 5'8.5", right? He's not a big guy, but he is explosive, really good with the ball in his hands. I mean, probably one of the best yards after catch players in this class. Unbelievable hands, a career drop rate of only 2.5%. And he plays bigger than, 5'8", 191. Can be a big-time asset in the return game. Think about that new kickoff rule. Player like this would be really, really helpful. So a unique skill set, kind of something the Bills don't have. I know that they have Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, who are slot receivers, but I think they are more crafty players. I think Malik Washington's that true, explosive burner. I know Curtis Samuel has low 4.3 speed, but there's a dangerous, you hold your breath when Malik Washington has the ball in his hands. And you felt that way about Curtis Samuel in the past. You have a kind of a younger version of that, but not as much height. Just a unique skill set. Think souped up. I mean, majorly souped up Isaiah McKenzie with actually good hands. Maybe that's what you would describe Malik Washington as. All right, one more pick. 133, we're going to go with Malik Mustafa, safety out of Wake Forest, 5'10", 206 pounds, ran 4.54 in the 40-yard dash, 41.5-inch vertical jump, 2-year starter for Wake Forest. Very physical player, smart player. That's one of my favorite things about him. Just always where he's supposed to be. Stays leveraged in coverage. He's an ideal split zone safety. Really good at triggering from deeper alignments, coming downhill, being physical. I think he would be a really good special teams player in year one. Third safety, and a guy that you look at as maybe a potential starter for you in 2025 and beyond. So in this scenario where the Bills stick and pick a non-wide receiver, we get Chop Robinson in the first round, the edge out of Penn State. Then we double dip with receivers. Pick 60, Jalen Polk out of Washington. Pick 128, Malik Washington out of Virginia. And then 133, we get a safety, Malik Mustafa out of Wake Forest. So there you have it. 3 different scenarios, one trading up, one trading back, one sticking and picking a non-wide receiver. We're going to do some more of these. Let me know what scenarios you want to see in the future mock draft episodes. We'll probably do one where the Bills stick and pick a wide receiver at 28. But what other stuff are you interested in seeing what that would look like when it's all said and done? Leave me a comment on YouTube, if you will. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on this episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that this helped you gain some perspective and maybe some clarity on the different possibilities that exist for Brandon Beane here in a couple of weeks, where we're all anticipating the 2024 NFL Draft. All right, that's it for today. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.